Hello everybody, my name is Lucy and welcome to Books and Brushes. So today I'm doing a bonus video for you. You are welcome. I've already done way too many videos in January. However, I couldn't not finish January by doing this one. Everyone does a favourites and least favourites of the year video and I feel like I've missed out on that. I really wanted to do it. It never fit in anywhere, so I'm just going to do an extra video. Loads of work for me. Isn't that joyous? And so I like the video just for the extra effort. Plus my voice is already dying from filming my book stats video. If you haven't watched, you should. On to the best and worst books of 2020. I'm dying to tell you about some of these. Let's talk about my favourites and least favourites of the year. God, I love these types of videos. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say the book and the month I read it in. So if you want to hear my more in-depth thoughts on any of these books, you can go back to the wrap-up of 2020 and you can hear about that book in more detail, hopefully. So let's just get started. We're going to start with the worst books of the year because I find it's less of a surprise. The number one is obvious. So going from the bottom to the top of the list, we are counting down or up. What is direction? So I have 6 of my least favourite books of the year. I tried to go with the number 6 for my worst and my best. Number 6 on the list was The Feed by Nick Clark Windu. I read this back in October, and if you watch that wrap up you may know why. It wasn't totally bad. None of the books on this list are, other than one, are completely dreadful, but it was just so weirdly written, annoyingly written. The beginning was like, ooh, I'm trying to be mysterious by not telling you literally anything and just confuse you. Be confused. And I didn't really like the writing style. I thought it was meh. I enjoyed the story the further it went on. The ending was kind of surprising, a bit tense, but overall, and now when I look back on it, I think it was a read, wasn't it? It wasn't great. That's why it's number 6 on this list. Number 5 on this list, oh god, please don't kill me. It's More Happy Than Not by Adam Silvera. Please don't hurt me. I read this back in November and I just didn't like it. I'm coming to terms with that now, you know? At the time, I was confused, I was hurt, I was disappointed, and now I just have to say, do you know what? I didn't like the book. I didn't like it. My reading experience was not good. I don't think the writing was for me. I think that was my main issue. The writing style just didn't work for me. I was confused. I didn't understand. The main character's decisions I didn't get. The friends that he had in that book, were gross and I hated them. I guess that was the point, but still, I didn't really like it. It had a great twist. The ending made up for the book, but for most of the book, I just wasn't enjoying it. Sorry, if you're an Adam Silvera stan, I am so sorry. I know a lot of people love this book and I wish I was you, but it wasn't me. I just didn't like this book. It's really annoying because some of my absolute best friends, Matthew for instance, I know this is one of your favourite books and I don't want to diss it. I really don't want to say I hate it. I don't hate it, I just don't like it. It did some screwy things to my mental health, which was already in a weird ass place in November. The book and me, we just weren't made to be. The more that I've looked online about this book, there's a lot of people that don't like this book. Not many, but there are some. I think this book is very hyped, so there's always that element of being disappointed if it's not incredible. I wish it had given me the heartbreak crying feels for all the right reasons, but it just didn't. And if you want to tell me in the comments that I'm a moron, I don't know what I'm talking about, this is the best book in the universe and I'm an idiot, go for it. I'll be fine. I can take it. Anyway, moving on. Number 4 on this list was Neverworld Wake. I read this also in November. November really didn't go great, huh? This book was a huge disappointment. The premise was cool. I like the idea of it more after you read it than while reading it. Before you read it and after you read it, it's a cool concept, but during it, it's just terrible. The Groundhog Day thing is a tired concept, so if you really want to do it, you have to bring something new to it. This book did not. It was dull. All the characters were bland. There's no real personality to the characters or the book. It felt like it lasted a million years, this story, and was actually quite short. Nothing stood out. There was no moral concepts or interests to bring the book through. It felt like a meander through time, and I understand that was the point. The book was supposed to make you mess with time. It seemed like they went on into infinity and the characters went a bit loopy, but it didn't really execute it well enough to be interesting. While reading it, it was just boring. And the mystery, I don't even remember who killed who and I don't care. Someone killed someone, oh I guess, it was that person. Okay, sure. I didn't care. It wasn't mysterious. It wasn't interesting. It just was unseasoned, bland nothingness. That sounds really harsh, doesn't it? I'm so sorry, but that's what it was. It was really, really boring. People have told me the concept sounds really interesting and they still want to read it, so go for it, but just be prepared that it might be dull as fuck. That's what I experienced. Number 3 is The Sacrifice Box, which I read back in April, I believe. Most of my worst books were near the end of the year, funny enough, but this one was way back in April. And it was a weird book. It wasn't bad. It definitely had some creepy, weird vibes, but I don't know if they were in a good way. It was just weird. I didn't really get it. The characters, I guess, were kind of interesting, but also not. I didn't really care about any of them. I thought the concept was quite interesting. There was a box and they all put a sacrifice in it, and they promised that they would always remain friends and that they'd never open that box without each other. And then someone goes back to retrieve an item and opens the box and unleashes this curse, and now everything's hunting them down to kill them. And this happened to a group of people in the past, and only one of them is still alive, and then he's trying to help them cure the curse of this box, and they all have to sacrifice things. So it sounds really cool, and I'll describe it. It sounds really amazing, but it was just bland. It had creepy vibes, which was good, but the rest of it was just boring. I didn't like it. I barely remember it. I just remember a few creepy moments and like, oh, that's an image in your head, but nothing stood out to me. None of the characters, plot. This and Neverwhere Wake really were on par. I don't know which one is worse. Honestly, these two books could flip in the list and it wouldn't really make a difference. This one wasn't great. It was weird, a bit confusing. It had a cool vibe and a cool concept, but I don't think it sold it to me. Number 2 on the list was The Eighth Girl, which I read in September. This one's annoying. I liked a lot of it. In fact, my reading experiences of this one was probably better than a lot of the others. However, the ending shot itself in the foot, and now I hate it. I have more feelings of hatred towards this book than I do some of the other ones, even if they were dull. Hatred beats dull in this list. Essentially what happened with this one, it was a thriller where the main character had multiple personality disorder, which I know is called something else now, but I can't remember. Dissociative identity disorder? Maybe that's it. Anyway, the main character was that, and I was really excited for a main character to have this. I really wanted to read about this, but I also didn't want it to be a caricature, you know. I was wary. This is a thriller, and you know when you go into a thriller, you don't want the mental health to be, oh, she's crazy, and that be the twist, because that's crap. So I started reading this book, and it was creepy, and it gave this really ominous vibe, and it had loads of subplots that just didn't go anywhere. The book got better, it got more interesting, although it was never fun to read. It got really interesting near the end. There was this whole takedown plot, and it looked at sex trafficking, and there was racism and underage sex trafficking, and there were some really gruesome, horrible moments. But it was like I was loving this idea of looking into this horrible problem of sex trafficking girls from around the world, fetishizing them and selling them off, creepy, horrible things. And I thought, this is a really cool thing to look into. I was into it, and then it ruined it. The twist, which was confusing, it was badly written. I had to go back and be like, wait, is that what it meant? Did it mean this? It was horrible, cheap caricature, and ruined all of the good it previously done by making the main character be like, oh, it's because of her mental disorder. And I'm like, really? Really? I thought you were better than this. It should have been about the issues that it was bringing up, and it should have been about this really interesting character with a disorder that we have in this world, and not been a stupid caricature of itself in the thriller genre. I'm just so disappointed. It was weird to read. I didn't like any of the characters. Most of the characters were unlikable. The main character was just an idiot. I didn't like it. It was my second least favourite of the year, and like I said, I was actually probably enjoying this book more than some of the others on this list for a while, but it ruined everything. It could have been so great and was so bad. That one really didn't do it for me. Number 1, the worst book I read in 2020. Drumroll please, you know the answer. Unless this is your first video, in which case, hi, welcome. You should go back to some of these wrap-ups and see me be intelligible. Well, probably not. The worst book I read this year is the one video I have a rant review of, and that is The 8 Pieces of Garbage. I mean, The 8 Pieces of Silver by Who Cares? I read this back in August. I hated it. All the other books on this list I disliked. This is the only book I hated. The other books are the worst, but they are not bad. This book came for my children. Like, I don't have children, but this book came for them. I hated it so bad, and I have a whole rant review on this book. I'm not even going to try and sum up why this book was so bad, because I have a whole video on it, and I had to vent and scream all of my feelings in that video. I explained all of it point by point, and I cannot open up that box again. I purged that from my system. I can't relive it. So if you want to know or want to relive my screaming, my complete frustration and horror and utter hatred for that book, go watch the rant review, because it's the only rant review on my channel. But I think it's a shocker. I think it's fun. It's great to see me basically be so frustrated I can't speak. By far the worst book from 2020, and one of the worst books I've probably ever read. Now let's move on from the worst and let's go to the best. These are the books that we want to give all the limelight, so let's move on to them. I read so many great books this year. This was a tough list. It was a very exclusive list put together, and I'm very sorry for all of the books I read that were great that just couldn't go on the list, and there were many. What I did with this is I split this favourites list into 2 parts. I've got the kind of like got the honourable mentions, and I've got the top 6. I've got a top 12, which sounds ridiculous. I read 73 books this year and almost all of them were great. It was hard to make this list. So I've got my top 6, which were the most best exclusive books ever, and then the next 6, which I couldn't not mention. And even then, there were some that didn't make it into this 12 at all. So let's get into the secondary favourites list. Starting at number 12, Heartstring, which I read in October. I really loved this book. If you remember that wrap up, I kind of hated the end of this book. The ending really pissed me off. However, I loved this book so much anyway that really annoying bit at the end I forgave, I guess, because it was still such a good reading experience. It was so much fun. I loved the tension and the suspense and the twist. You could have seen it coming, but I'm not Detective Big Brain. I wasn't thinking about it, and the twist was cool, and I thought it was really interesting and great topics and great internal conflict. It was an amazing read, even though the ending had this horrible cliffhanger for a standalone that I didn't enjoy. But other than that, this book was superb. So even the ending that pissed and frustrated me off so much, it still made the favourites list. That says something about it, doesn't it? It was really, really good. Number 11 on this list is The Institute, which I read in October. Who would have thought a Stephen King book would be in this list? Not me. I'm really surprised. When I read it, I was really surprised, and even still, I'm really surprised. This book was just fun. I loved reading it, and I really want to reread it, which means I know it was good, and it was so creepy and ominous, and the characters and the way it was written, the plot and the escape and the facility, it was so fascinating, and the powers and kids, I don't know, just the whole thing. It was a winning formula for me. I really enjoyed it, and sometimes it doesn't need more than that to be on a favourites list. It was one of the most fun books I think I read this year, which is weird to say when you're talking about kidnapping children, but you know my style. If you've watched my videos for the first time, that's gonna be a comment to remember. Now we're coming on to number 10, and that is The Six of Crows duology by Levi Dugo, more specifically Crooked Kingdom, which I read in January and February. So you can probably go back to February to get a better sum up of Crooked Kingdom, which was my favourite, and overall, because I don't think I'd finished Six of Crows by the end of the wrap up of January. This book is probably the most hyped up, the most read of all of them. I get why. I see now. I didn't understand before, but now I do. It's a dense, high fantasy. It's got a criminal, creepy underbelly element. It's very dangerous and dark, and it's got great character relationships, dialogue, a super intelligent heist plot, which is probably my favourite, most intelligent book I think of reading right now. It was so well plotted and written. I can't imagine outlining that duology. You can say what you want, but there's a certain amount of talent to make that. The Shadow of Bone trilogy I really was not a fan of, but this duology, I love it, which seems to be the common opinion, that that other trio was bad and this one was good. I am not different from the masses. It was a great read. I had so much fun reading it. I was gasping so much, so many tense moments. You think they're dead every 5 seconds. The plot, the heist twist is constantly red herring and fooling you into thinking it's going wrong when, you know, they're gonna solve it, but you have no idea how. It was great. It's on this list at number 10, and not really surprised. It's not my favourite read of the year, so maybe that's a surprise for you. Who knows? It was a bit dense, and that's probably why it's lower on the list, but credit where all credit is due. Number 9 on this list is the Nevermore trilogy. I guess it's not a trilogy anymore because the series is going to be longer. I thought it was going to be a trilogy when I went into reading it, and I read Hollowpox for the first time. I've already read Nevermore and Wondersmith before that, and then I read Hollowpox for the first time. This was all in December, by the way. I love this trilogy. It's a middle grade. It's one of my favourite middle grades of all time. I love it so much. My buzzword for this trilogy is whimsical. It is so creative, magical, and just homely. I want Nevermore to be real. I want to live at the Hotel Julicon. I don't know how to say it. I want the kooky Juniper North to be in my life. I want the Magnificats, and I want the Animal Ones and Friends. I want to know Hawthorne. I just love the characters. I love the world. The setting. The hotel is a character in the book. How does that work? I don't know. The locations in the book feel like characters. There's plot twists, and it's just a fantastic middle grade. If you are looking for a new middle grade to take your heart, this is the one, and I love it. It's a shame this wasn't in the top 6, which I'm probably going to say about loads of books. I just love it. It has my heart. I cannot wait for all of the books in this series to come out. I'm not going to show, I always show the naked hardcover for this book without the dust jacket. It's so darn beautiful, but I posted it on Instagram, so if you're not following me on Instagram, you should go see that, because I just took the beautiful pictures with them all. They make me happy. And that is where you get first news on what I've read. Go to Instagram and follow me there. Number 8 on this list probably should be higher. It kind of hurts my heart to put it at 8. That does not really sound like it gives it enough justice, but that is The Toll, which I read back in January. I read The Scythe and The Thunderhead in 2019, so those couldn't be in this list, but The Toll slipped in there. It was not the best of the trilogy. I think Scythe and Thunderhead were better. The Toll was quite large, there was a lot more introduced, there was so much going on, and I think for that reason some people were disappointed by the Toll, but I mean, so much was happening. The finale was just Neil Shusterman does what he does best. Everything culminated and smashed together from all the angles, which is what he is known for. If you don't know, if you're new here, Neil Shusterman is my favourite author. That's why being 8th on this list is a little disappointing. I guess it's because it wasn't the favourite of the trilogy, and it's not my favourite of his series. My favourite is Unwind, which will be number 1 forever. Nothing's beaten Unwind, I don't think, ever. This one's had to be on this list somewhere. I wish it was higher, but there are other books that beat it, which proves how good this list is. Number 7 on this list, the last of the secondary favourites, is A Song of Wraith and Ruin, which I read in November. Oh my god, go watch the November wrap up if you want to know, because I love this book. It was so good. I'd heard it was amazing. Don't get your hopes up, you don't want to be let down, and I just loved it. It is a high fantasy set in a West African cultured setting. It's got a character with anxiety. It's basically a black cast, black girl magic, intense magic. We got gods, wraiths, which are basically anxiety personified into creatures. We got assassins attempting to assassinate each other, but neither knows that they're doing it. I'm not going to go into the plot, there's too much going on, but it never felt info dumpy. The first couple of chapters, it was like, oh god, I'm in high fantasy again. But once I got over that very small bump, the book was fantastic. I was so along for the thrill ride. I just really loved A Song of Wraith and Ruin. I cannot wait for the second one. And it's really sad it didn't quite make it into the top 6. It's right on the tails of it though. It's like nipping at the heels. It's so close and it was so good. That doesn't diminish this book at all. I loved it. But now we're into the top 6. This is how close this list is. Like, every book feels like it should be higher on the list. Oh my god, my throat is dying. I've said 3 million words. Number 6 on this list, The Saviour's Sister, which I read back in April. So I will have it written here in case I'm wrong. Oh my god. This book was fantastic. I can't believe it's only number 6. Like, why? It should be number 1. This list is just too good for its own good. The Saviour's Sister was incredible. So it is a companion novel to The Saviour's Champion, which I read in 2018, I think. That one was incredible. A completely amazing beginning to a series. It was such a good story. And I was a little nervous for the companion because companion novels, they've burned before. But I had faith Jenna Moreci would. If she wrote one, there had to be a reason, and my god, was it. You still know the timeline, the events of the story, but from a completely new perspective. There's so much going on behind the scenes. It is basically a new story, and you see so many things you didn't see before, and it's so interesting to see that. There's so much political drama and intrigue and powerlessness. You've got magic, more so than in The Saviour's Champion, because the main character is magic. You've got Father of the Year, and by that I mean the most abusive, horrible piece of shit ever, the Sovereign. Oh, Bronte. So many twists, and there's this one big twist that slapped me right around the fucking face. If you've not read a Jenna Moreci book, you've got a lot in for you. It is filled with gore and fighting and moral intrigue. You got the political and the palace side, and it's like a Greek Romanesque setting in a fantasy world, and there's great in-depth characters, a healthy romance which was so swoon worthy. It's full of swearing. This is an adult book, and sexiness and gore. I saw a whole new side of some of the characters. I really loved The Saviour's Sister. I will love Jenna Moreci until the day I die. It's amazing to have a book that's so incredible, and to know that the author is also incredible. It's just a bonus, and I'm so glad that Jenna Moreci is doing so well in her career, and I just wish her the best in her personal life too. So let's move on to number 5, and that is The Places I've Cried in Public, which I read in July. The Places I've Cried in Public was a contemporary, which is weird. Well done to this book for getting in the top 6. Wow. It is the only contemporary to make it into this list, so one of a kind. It was so good. I've never read a Holly Bourne book before. I know she's quite beloved. I didn't know anything about Holly Bourne, and I loved the story. It's basically about a girl who is coming to terms with a past relationship she went through, and how maybe, just maybe, it was abusive. It's her coming to terms with the red flags she missed, how it went wrong, and how she so easily fell for something, how these things happen. Victim blaming is all the rage, but you can't help not seeing these things when you're in them. Being the victim is never your fault. It was a tough subject. It was hard to read, but it was so well written. Don't know if anyone could have pulled this off with quite the finesse that Holly managed. It was gut-wrenching, so cleverly written, the way it was formatted. Each chapter was a place he made her cry, so the way it was sectioned was so well done. I'm pretty sure I did cry. The characters were so real, I really felt for it. This book really took a piece of my heart, and that's why it is on this list. We need more books about things like this, bad relationships, toxic things to look for. It was so good, so important. It was set in the north of England, which was a really really great setting, then kind of the south of England. I kind of wish it was higher, but then again, it is 5th, which is an incredibly good place in this list. That sounds like it's not enough, like I've said with all these books. So let's move on to number 4, The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue, which I read in June. I'm pretty sure it was June. This book I did not expect. I was a little bit intimidated by this book. I didn't think I was going to like it so much because historical fictions tend to be rocky for me. And I did not expect this book to come in, smash my life, make me swoon, make me love, make me cry, make me angst, make me terrified every time things go wrong. And it's so embedded in my heart now. So this book is set all around Europe. The main characters are British though, and they're going on a grand tour to celebrate Monty's coming of age. He's basically a privileged boy about to come and inherit the house, and he's going on a road trip with his best friend Percy, who he's deeply in love with, and his sister Felicity. This trio is truly the golden trio. They are so good together. Felicity's got all the sass and the intelligence. The two clash so much, but it's great. Percy is so good. He's also black, so there's talks of racism. There's so much queerness because they're two gay characters and they are such a lovable queer gay romance. So much excitement going on. The book was set in the past. There's racism talks with Percy being black and Monty not really understanding how to deal with it and not having to be the hero. And from Percy's perspective, I'm saying all the words wrong. I've been filming for so long, my throat is literally pounding. Does that sound like it's medically okay? It swept me along into this amazing adventure that had my heart. I wanted Percy and Monty to be together so bad. Felicity and the growth between these two sibling characters was brilliant. Monty, I thought, was such a 3D, well-developed character. He was a rich white boy. For every reason on this planet, he should have been the most privileged guy ever. But he also had so many things going on in his life. There were talks of abuse and bisexuality and a lot of damage and trauma and trying to solve it with alcohol and sex. And damn, do I have a best friend that sounds exactly like them. So it had bi rep, it had gay rep, so much fun, so swoon worthy, so exciting, so many near kisses and near deaths. Just the whole thing. I did not expect this book to come for me, but it came for me and I loved it so much. I had so much fun with it, and that's why it's number 4. Okay, we're in the top 3. These 3 are on the podium. Number 3 and number 2 I'm actually kind of gonna lump together. Oh my god, changing all the rules. But number 3 is the Savage Song duology, and number 2 is the Darker Shade of Magic trilogy. All by V. Schwab. I read the Savage Song duo back in April, and I read the Darker Shade trilogy. I read one a month throughout the summer in these months. Oh my god, let's start with this Savage Song. Let's try and break it down. So this Savage Song duology was really my first full foray into Victoria Schwab. I'd read The City of Ghosts before that, but other than that, which isn't really her usual flavour, this was my first foray into Schwab. Oh my god, she has my heart. She's now one of my favourite authors. These two series are why. Both of these series were so creative, the settings were really interesting, so much moral intrigue in both of them, such great characters in both of them. These series are incredible. So different and yet have similarities, both so good. And honestly, you could swap the 2nd and 3rd place in this list and it wouldn't really make a difference because they're both so good, and I struggled to place which one was in 3rd and which one was in 2nd. So I just put the Savage Song duology in 3rd because I think Magic had a slight edge. So wafer thin though, by a hair. Savage Song duology, it blew my fucking mind. The setting is like this dystopian city and evil acts breed monsters, and one of the main characters is a monster, a rare monster who steals souls with music, and there's just so many cool elements, and the world was so creative and cool and dark and gritty. Oh, it's so beautifully written, and the characters, the dynamic between the two main characters were great. You have that monstrous character who wants to be good, and then you have what's supposed to be a good character, but she's got quite a sharp edge. That dynamic, so good together. I love monsters who felt so human. Humans, monsters, basically the same thing in this book, and really treading the line of what makes a monster. And the stealing of the souls and the music, the violin, and the family of August. This book was so tense, and it was a thrill ride, and it was two characters who had no reason to trust each other becoming allies. I love this duo so much. It had so much texture. It had all of the ingredients to be something I love, and it was just beautiful. The Darker Shade is the exact same. The Darker Shade trilogy, again, the fantasy setting, it's just so creative and well fleshed, and it feels like a real place. It was incredible. I loved Arnez and the Red City, and all of the different places were so well described, all the different Londons, white, grey, but Arnez is probably my favourite, the Magic City. I loved the royal family aspect with Kel and the strange relationship, sibling relationships. Here you've got Kel and his relationship with Layla or Lila. We've got the gay romance. There's such a good gay romance in this trilogy, which is probably, I had the edge because they had my fucking heart. I would die for them. I just loved these characters together. It was so epic. epic. This story was the biggest stakes. That third book, oh my god. From the first page, the end of the second book, the beginning of the third book, my heart was beating. I needed a hospital. I just couldn't deal. I can't deal now thinking about it. The magic system was so creative and intelligent and beautiful. I love the characters. So well written. Again, we have the redemption arc. We have such evil characters that were so good, so sadistic. We have evil personified. We have the games and the magic elements and how these different cities interact and the smuggling, and I'm making probably no sense anymore. I know that. My throat dying and cutting out every other word is making this even harder. And the feels make it hard too. I'm not intelligible, but it's fine. It was an amazing series. It had so much hype, so I was scared. It was a buddy read I did with Matthew. We loved it so much. I just couldn't with this series. The characters are what made it, but the fantasy setting and the magic system, take notes. If I had to critique Victoria Schwab in any way, I say I wish there was a little bit more diversity. There's not really many people of colour in Victoria Schwab's books, which for me is an issue which I wish would be different, but it's beautiful, it's amazing. I've stopped making sense. Let's move on to number one, and I'm gonna make less sense. Number one book of 20, why am I singing? My favourite series of 2020 was the Shadow of the Fox series by Julie Kagawa, which I read in May. My favourite of the three was probably, if I had to pick, Soul of the Sword, although Night of the Dragon made me cry endlessly. Depends what you're looking for. Shadow of the Fox was an amazing, beautiful adventure that set up these characters in this world so splendidly. It was so almost episodic. It was just beautiful. It had so many tales. The second one though came for me. It came for my heart, and that's why it was probably my favourite, because it had the relationships and the banter between the crew. This is where the crew was at its peak. And then the third one, it ruined me. It took my heart, my precious beating heart, and destroyed it, crushed it, and stomped on it, and spat on it, and then put it back together with love and tears. I'm sorry if that is graphic and weird and gross, but that's how I feel. Fantasy setting was so rich and well described. I loved the Japanese style and the culture. There was so many great things. The characters, we have Yumiko, who is the sweet bean, who is so naive, so pure, yet she has that trickery and she uses what she's got to her advantage, her trickery and the kitsune thing and the magic. I don't want to say anything to spoil. Her main character was amazing. And then we have Tatsumi. You know when you have that sweet character and the grumpy character and it's a match made in heaven? This book has that. We have the soul in the sword, so Tatsumi had to control his emotions not to get the sword to override him, and there was that really interesting dynamic there. Then we have the best gay romance. I lose all of my shits. The romance between some main characters as well, but there was this gay romance that was my life, my best OTP of 2020. It was so good. I love them so much. I don't want to spoil things. It was a total surprise for me. I didn't know this. I don't think you should either. Just go in. I love this series. It had magic, history, setting that was so great, so cool to see, the culture and the Japanese. It was called Iwagato, that was the fantasy land. It had the myths and the legends. It was based off the mythology of Japanese culture, which was so great and so richly woven in. I love the story. A lot of people have said it was like an anime, but I don't watch anime, so that doesn't mean a lot to me, but that makes me want to watch anime. So many tales and picking up characters along the way to form this crew, which I would die for. These are ride or die characters, and there was death. The dialogue between these characters, pure genius. The descriptions. This book had my heart for so many reasons. It was so well written. I was there. It had me swooning and screaming for all the best reasons, and it did that the most out of all the books on this list, and that is why it is number one. I can't believe it was that good, but it was. This was again a buddy read I read with Matthew, one of my bestest booktube friends, just friends in general to be honest. Me and Matthew have become so tight, and I love you, Matthew. We died, we swooned, we discussed, and that reading experience probably heightened this for me, but then again, it doesn't matter. If I'd have read it with or without Matthew, it would still be number one, but the fact I did read my favourite book with Matthew, what a stroke of luck that was. And I just had so much fun with that book series. I'm gonna have to reread it. It's my favourite book series of 2020, and probably my favourite fantasy ever. Big statement, but I think that's my favourite fantasy series I've ever read. My favourite series is still Unwind, but this one is definitely going in the list, and it's the favourite fantasy, definitely. And that's it. That's my favourites and least favourite books from 2020. I've been talking forever. I'm losing daylight. Let me know down in the comments, were there any surprises on my worst or favourites list? Were there any you want to shout at me for? I know I'm more happy than not. I know the barrage is coming. Are there any that you want to read because I've talked about them and love them so much? Any that you've read and loved or hated? Let me know down in the comments below your favourite book 2020 or something about one of these books on this list. Honestly, you can talk to me about the weather, so I just want to chat with you guys in the comments. Thank you so much for joining me, and I can't wait to look back on this video in a few years and remember the best and the worst. Thank you for watching. Please like this video. My dying throat begs you to do so. And subscribe if you're not. I'm on 195 subscribers right now. I'm so close to 200. If I can get to 200, that would be such a cool milestone for me. Talk to me in the comments, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye.